So hello, everybody. Welcome back to the GIMI Think Tank. As you know, GIMI Think Tank is our platform that we run it every Wednesday, each month, basically. And this is a platform where we invite all innovators, our GIMI partners, our GIMI ambassadors, GIMI alumni. And this is a day that we usually share knowledge with each other. So this is the main aim of GIMI, to transfer knowledge, cutting edge trends, new innovative products that are happening around the world. And we want to discuss, brainstorm, and think about innovative solutions together. So every week we have either a topic which is related to a trend, or a GIMI product which is growing somewhere in the world, or an innovation state of a country that we don't know much about it. Or some topic which is related directly or indirectly with innovation. So today we have Henry May, and we are basically very honored to have him. He is going to talk about Edumotion, which is like an innovation bet that he took himself to change education in LatAm. So he's a social entrepreneur from United Kingdom, has created social enterprises, Coschool basically, and Huracan Foundation. And I'm very glad for this, because social entrepreneurship is like a topic which is dear to my heart, and I've been working and investing on this as well for several times. And also education, which is very important for GIMI, and we have lots of topics, similar topics every week, which are relating to innovation and education as well. Coschool is one of the initiatives that Henry has founded, which has impacted over 2,000 students and 10,000 teachers. And basically, he has received investment from Acumen, which is a big and a large, basically, organization on social impact, which is investing in social impact and providing as well courses on that. And as well, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They are trying to create a learning community of educators in Latin America, and they are recognized as the top 100 innovation in the world for education. As well, Huracan Foundation is a global NGO which incubates, accelerates soccer and education projects, and they have done tons of impact as well in this regard. Henry himself is recognized, and he has several awards. One of these is like being one of the 100 meaningful business leaders for 2021. So in the end, I have to say that we are just glad to have you here, Henry. And please fill in more information if you feel that I missed something. And we are looking forward to your speech.
Thanks so much, Arila. Thank you very much for the warm and kind welcome. It's great to be here. Thanks for everyone for connecting. I'm going to share my screen. Get some slides going. Let me know. Everyone should be able to see the screen fine by now. Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I thought I'd start off with a very common question, which is the question, how are you? It's a question we probably ask ourselves, and we ask our family members, and we ask our children and our friends every single day. But in order to answer this question today, I want to give you a little bit of help. I want you to look at this grid here, where you can start to give yourself a bit of a kind of a grading according to two axes. One is energy and one is pleasantness. So if you're feeling really high energy at the moment, then you would score yourself kind of high up there. So you'd be, either red or yellow. And then pleasantness will be, are you feeling nice, relaxed? Are you feeling positive? Or is the energy maybe a little bit less positive? Is it a little bit of a kind of a chaotic energy at the moment? So you're going to find yourself in one of these squares. If you really wanted to, you could start to like annotate the screen and stuff. I mean, I'm gonna try and annotate the screen. So right now, I would say that my energy is pretty good. Not really high though, probably like a +1 energy. And pleasantness probably like a +3. So I'm probably in the yellow area. I'm probably like there. That's where I am at the moment. And I hope everyone else can kind of start to locate themselves. There is absolutely nothing wrong with being down in this place, being down in this place, being in this place, being in this place. There's no right answer here. We may want to think that being up and to the right is the best solution, but actually there is no right or wrong. when we come to kind of identifying how we're feeling. And now, if we go to the next slide, what we can do is now is we can start to put some words on how we're feeling. So I put myself kind of here. I was feeling kind of like fairly energetic, but a little bit more kind of pleasant, good vibes. So that would invite me to maybe consider if I feel connected with this word, hopeful. And maybe people could just write in the chat the word that they connected with, just to see kind of what types of words are coming through. You may feel like this word doesn't represent you. You may feel like the word is untrue. You may wish that you were in a different word closer by, and that's fine. You could switch. You could say, no, I feel actually much more identified with thankful or grateful or calm or miserable or sad or whatever it might be. So I'm just going to check the chat. Okay, Laura has put focused. Great. Anyone else want to write in the chat? Just share which word you found, or you can also share which word you feel most connected to. I'm going to give it 20 seconds. Don't be shy. Feel free to write in the chat. I'm going to try and make this a little bit interactive. So I will thank you, Addy. Great, inspired. So Addy would be located up in kind of the top yellow corner, connected, restless. Okay, thanks, Nick. That kind of like that you would be, Nick. I'm trying to find where restless is. Is that kind of like high energy? Yeah, high energy, but maybe not feeling that great. Okay, connected. Awesome. Okay, thanks a lot. What we've just done there is a very short activity that anyone can use to start a meeting. Anyone could use to start a brainstorming session with your team, checking in and identifying how people are feeling. Helps you as the facilitator understand kind of what's going on in the room, but it also helps participants. It helps people start to identify and name the way that they're feeling. And I want you to imagine, what if we had classrooms and we had schools where young people every day were able to start creating this type of vocabulary and this type of language, where young people were able to describe accurately, oh, you know what, I'm feeling really nervous at the moment. Oh, I'm feeling super calm. I'm feeling grateful. This vocabulary, these words are generally things we learn as adults. We generally learn them when it's kind of too late, or when we're much further on in life. And one of the things that we do in my organization is we're trying to increase emotional literacy and emotional intelligence in schools. And so we believe that every child should have the opportunity to learn this vocabulary and to understand ways to talk about how they're feeling. Because once they're able to do that, they're able to communicate better how they're feeling. The teacher that they're working with can create a better learning experience for them. Things can be adapted. Children can learn about when they need to take a time out, when they're feeling good, when they can do teamwork and so on. So yeah, very simple exercise of like the kind of the check-in. And this comes from Yale. Yale have a Center for Emotional Intelligence. This is a part of a strategy called RULER, which is kind of 5 steps. Each of the 5 letters kind of means something, like starts with recognizing, understanding, labeling, expressing, and I think regulating is the final kind of step. So yeah, all about developing more emotional literacy. Instead of telling you all about my job, I thought I'd start off by sharing a search that I did on ChatGPT. I don't know if anyone has done this yet. I'm sure some of you might have, but will ChatGPT replace my job? I'm curious to learn if this area that we're in of emotional education, emotional literacy, will AI replace this too? And it seems that for now, I might be safe, but AI could definitely play a role in supporting my work. It's unlikely to completely replace my job. And this key sentence at the end is, it cannot replace the human connection that is essential to your work. So this work of developing social and emotional competencies and social and emotional skills in young people remains to be human work, humans working with humans, but AI and technology can support and can accelerate how we do this. And I guess today I'll be telling you a little bit about how we're using technology to accelerate and to scale our business model to reach more schools and reach more children, reach more teachers in Latin America. But I want to go back in time to 2009 and tell you about a student of mine. I was a teacher in a South London school. This is an image of the school, St. Michael and All Angels Academy in South London, in a part of London called Camberwell. Some of you might be familiar with London. I doubt many of you have visited Camberwell or Peckham, but that's where my school was. And I was a teacher there with a program called Teach First. And I had 6 weeks training. I went in to be a teacher. And on the first day, I met Colin. Colin was a 14-year-old student, Nigerian background. He was taller than me, loved playing basketball. He was the typical student that took advantage of new teachers, if you know what I mean. When a new teacher came in, Colin started to mess around with me. He started to hide my books. He started to not pay attention to me. He started to just kind of enjoy having this very inexperienced teacher in his school. And we had a very complicated relationship because Colin really didn't let me do my job. And I wasn't very good at my job. I kind of sucked as a teacher in my first few months. So Colin and I had a meeting with a policeman. We had a policeman that was permanently in the school, and we did a process of reconciliation. Colin agreed he was going to listen more, and I agreed I was going to become a better teacher and do different types of strategies for Colin. And we actually started to improve a lot during the rest of that first year. And by the end of the year, I remember that Colin was sat down taking his exam, his philosophy exam, and I went in and looked at him, and Colin was giving me a big thumbs up, and I was like, yeah, like, Colin's going to get a good grade in his exam. I'm so happy. Like, I've helped Colin. I'm this great teacher. You know, like, I felt so proud of myself, so proud of Colin. And Colin ended up getting a B grade, which is a really good grade for his philosophy exam. And was a great surprise to everyone, including me. When we came back for my second year as a teacher, the head teacher of the school organized a meeting for all of the teachers, and the head teacher said, well, I don't know if you guys saw, but during the holidays there was an incident in our local community, and a young person lost their life. A young person was murdered. And I thought I did see something on the news, but definitely it wasn't one of our students. And she said, well, unfortunately, Colin, 15, going into the kind of year 11, the equivalent of 10th grade, was involved in the murder. He was one of 3 students who one evening in 2010 got onto a bus and murdered another young man. And so Colin was sent to juvenile prison. And this began a series of kind of terrible events for the school. We had another student who lost their life at 4 p.m. the day after school. A few weeks after this, we had another student who lost their life. And the government announced that they were going to close down the school. That was it, that the school was a place parents no wanted to send their kids. And I started to question myself a lot as a teacher. And I started to realize, what had I been doing as a teacher? What was my role in Colin's education? What was my role as a teacher? I had been 100% focused on academic results, on exam scores, on helping students like Colin get a better grade in their philosophy exam. At no moment did I actually get to understand, who was Colin? What were his interests? What did he like? Where did he want to go in life? What were the challenges he was facing? What was his home life like? None of that. And in my second year as a teacher, I started to experiment with lots of different things. I set up an entrepreneurship club in the school. I set up the school football team. I started to do lots of things, and I didn't realize it at the time. But what I was doing was starting to tap in to my students' social and emotional skills, developing this whole side of the skills that students have related to decision making, empathy, teamwork, skills that are actually much easier to teach on the football pitch than they are in the classroom. And so that's how my journey kind of began into this world of social and emotional learning. and yeah, 13, 14 years later, I'm now in Colombia, and I'll tell you a bit about kind of what I'm doing here now. But I think the story for me began with this very hard story and this very hard experience that made me realize that we have to do things a different way. We cannot keep doing things the way we've always done things. We need a different type of education. So yeah, this is a quick just introduction to me and my life. This is Olivia. She's my daughter. She's nearly 1 year old. My family back in the UK, my brother, my niece and nephew, my cat and dog, my wife, Angie. One of my big hobbies is trail running. I also happen to be a Fulham FC fan, big football fan. Please don't talk to me about the result against Manchester United at the weekend. So anyway, that's a bit about me. And a little bit about my life. One other kind of very interesting part of my life, and that Arila mentioned, is I've set up a football foundation called the Huracan Foundation. It's a pretty amazing story, and if you want to look it up and look up Huracan FC London, the Huracan Foundation. If you're interested in football, if you're interested in Argentina, if you're interested in Argentinian football culture, it's a connection between a club in Argentina, a bunch of guys in London that ended up creating a global football foundation that supports early stage football projects now in more than 15 countries. We've supported projects, and the story is actually being turned into a movie. So it's gonna, hopefully maybe in a few years time you'll see the full story on Netflix, but it's a pretty amazing story, and the coolest thing about the story is that today we support projects, incredible projects in countries like Uganda, and we've created this global network of football teams around the world. And Coschool, the project I run in Colombia, began with a football project, and so football is a very important part of my life. So my main focus today is I'm the CEO and co-founder of Coschool. I've been working on Coschool now for 9 years, coming up to 10 years. And Coschool, it has a kind of a platform and a product called Edumoción. That has become our core focus and our core product. It's online learning platform for teachers, probably parents soon, around this topic of social and emotional learning. Coschool has been, I think, yeah, as Arila mentioned, we've received investment from Acumen, one of the biggest impact investment funds in the world. We've worked with the IEDB, Gates Foundation, Templeton World Charity Foundation, who are an amazing partner of ours, and received various awards for our innovations. And yeah, proud to be a B Corporation, proud to be recognized as one of top 100 education innovations 2 years in a row, one of the top education, well, edtechs in LatAm, and so on. And it kind of Coschool's ethos and spirit, I think, comes down to like this pretty simple idea that I've already mentioned about my experience with Colin. I think I failed Colin as a teacher. I was not a great teacher for Colin. I did not help Colin to develop the skills that he needed to. But in our lives, I think we've all had at least one transformative teacher. And I think everyone here, we could probably think of one transformative teacher that we've had in our lives. And I'd invite you to maybe think, who was that teacher that really made a difference for you? In my case, the teacher that really made a difference for me, and I've realized this now kind of much further into the future, but was Mr. Holden. He was my football coach when I was 12. He was a teacher that believed in me, a teacher that saw in me a potential for leadership, but no other teacher ever made me captain of a football team. No other teacher made me believe that I was actually quite a good artist. He was also an art teacher. And that belief that Mr. Holden put in me was just incredible for 12-year-old Henry. And I believe that every young person needs a teacher like Mr. Holden in their lives. And so Coschool's mission is to help develop and to help support teachers like Mr. Holden to flourish and to thrive and to have an impact on their students in the same way that Mr. Holden did on me. And I'm sure your transformative teacher also had on you. Currently, teaching and education educators is a job that is going to grow. It's projected to grow almost double by 2030. More and more people become educators and will become teachers. Young people and children are going to continue needing educators. This idea of lifelong learning and adult learning means that there is a need for more and more people to become teachers. And I think the type of teachers that are emerging and the kind of the categories of teachers is changing. So the role of a teacher is probably not going to be someone that's in a classroom with 30 students. We're going to have lots of different kind of definitions of what an educator is. Experts, people who have spent 20, 30 years, developing knowledge about something really specific, whether that's building motorways, or running innovation programs, or cooking, or whatever it might be. Experts are going to continue to be important. Facilitators, people that aren't experts necessarily, but are very, very good at facilitating learning with their students. So facilitators, people that now that we have so much knowledge in our hands, we have so much power in our phone with ChatGPT, with being able to look things up on the internet. What we need is people who can facilitate learning experiences and can manage groups of people to go through effective learning experiences. Influencers, we're now learning, and I'm sure everybody here could probably agree with me, we're learning from social media. We're learning through people that post 10-second clips or 60-second clips. I'm learning about being a parent through influencers who have followings on Instagram. I watch them and I think, oh yeah, that's how I should deal with my daughter. So this idea of like educators are now appearing on social media and educating us. And of course, parents continue to have a key role in the way that they educate and bring up their parents, their kids. Probably never been more important. So the type of educators we're going to have is going to change. So education is going to continue to be a key part of society. It's never going to go away, and therefore educators are not going to go away. But the type of educator we have will probably change. And to face all of these challenges that we're facing, global warming, migration, mass movement of people, how are we going to manage AI? How are we going to interact with technology in an ethical and responsible way? What's going to happen with the job crisis and the next wave of unemployment that will occur due to the financial crisis, due to artificial intelligence and so on? I think that we could all agree that we're probably not preparing students still for tomorrow's world. If you go to a school, imagine in Colombia, I visited probably hundreds of public schools by this stage. Like if you go to a school, we're not preparing students in the classrooms of today for the challenges that they're going to face tomorrow. And that needs to change. And that responsibility comes from government, the private sector, startups like edtechs, like Coschool. But I think it's really important that there's something we're all thinking about. You as business leaders experience it with the type of young people that are arriving for their first job and are struggling and haven't got the right skills and therefore require lots of training and lots of onboarding and a difficult process to kind of get going in your companies. That begins in the education sector. That begins in classrooms. Gerd Leonard is one of the futurists that I really enjoy listening to. And while there was this outbreak of a few years ago of what we need is STEM, we need more young people with these skills and interested in developing and interested in engineering jobs. That's absolutely true, but in some ways that left a big gap of the other side. And so Gerd talks about STEM and HESI, humanities, ethics, creativity, and imagination. The two things need to be taught. The two things need to exist in schools. If we're just going to focus on STEM, and you might go to a school and it's like, yeah, we're the STEM school. We do robots and we do coding and like computational thinking. Okay, great. And what about the other side? What about the ethics behind this? What about the creativity side of it? It's not just about learning languages of computational thinking. It's about learning how we interact with people. It's about learning history. It's about learning, about society and about the role that we have as humans in society. So I thought I would share just like an example of a teacher in Colombia. Like Gladys is an incredible teacher working in rural Colombia, in northwest Antioquia, in Urubá, part of the country really affected by violence. And Gladys, to me, is the example of hope for teachers all around the world, because Gladys is a teacher that's been teaching in the classroom for 10 years, 12 years. And Gladys is a teacher that's open to learning and improving and developing her skills. And the main area where Gladys and many, many teachers realize that they want to improve and they need to improve is in this area of emotional well-being, developing their own mental health so that they can then support their students to deal with mental health challenges. last year, we did a survey of 200 teachers, and 67% said that their biggest challenges with their own mental and emotional health. If we have teachers in classrooms who are not okay, who are not well, it's very difficult that they're going to be able to be doing a good job for teachers, for their students. So we need to create support systems for teachers to take care of their own mental health, so that they can then take care of students and help students to navigate these challenges and this very challenging world that students are growing up into. So with Gladys has been through a training program with us on our Edumoción platform. I'm pretty confident in saying that Gladys is a transformed teacher that's learned several strategies to implement in her own life, in her classroom, in her school, and now in the training of other teachers to develop these habits around her own mental health. So, for example, what does it look like in a school when we succeed, or when a school as a whole system is ensuring that, for example, the idea of relationships is being truly taken care of? This is a video from a program that we're running with school leaders across Colombia called Primed, in which we help school leaders reflect using 6 kind of design principles on how they can ensure that social and emotional learning is happening in their schools. And I want you to listen to this example, because it's a pretty simple example about how powerful this idea of building intentional relationships, building intentional social skills within schools between adults and children can be.
Most people think that relationships happen naturally, and usually they do. But the challenge is for the people who have more difficulty developing relationships. So therefore, we have to be strategic and intentional about building relationships. A good example of that is from a middle school near where I live in St. Louis, Missouri, in the United States. And it's Francis Howell Middle School. Amy Johnston was the principal there, led the school to excellence through character education, was nationally recognized for it. And one of the things she said was that relationships won't happen unless you build time in your master schedule for them to happen. And so they came up with an idea in the school of what they call character connections. Recognized that some kids just don't develop strong relationships with teachers outside this class. So they made a list of every student in the school, and there were over 800 of them. And they asked the teachers to put a mark next to every student for whom they had a substantial relationship, more than just the students in my class. And what they found is most students had multiple relationships. They had multiple teachers that they had developed relationships with, and some just one. There was a teacher they found they clicked with, but there was a small subset of students who had no relationships. No adult said, I have a relationship with this child. So they then made a list of those students without relationships with adults. And they asked the adults in the school to volunteer to choose one of them and strategically build a relationship with that child. Because we know from research that the difference between 0 and 1 relationships psychologically is a huge difference. Having that one meaningful relationship is critically important.
Okay, so that was just a short video from I'm just going to share my screen again, from this project that we've been working on. We're called Primed, in which we help school leadership teams develop intentional strategies within their school for developing social and emotional skills. Often, and I think like an interesting comparison here could be with innovation in companies, and something that I'm sure many of you are very familiar with, which is around this idea of intentionality. Innovation in companies doesn't just happen. It doesn't just appear magically kind of like in the air. It happens when we're intentional about it. And in schools, relationships happen best when we are intentional about it. And so they don't just happen organically and we just, people just get on with each other and everything we find. The schools where we have the best relationships are schools which make time for developing relationships, where they promote spaces for people to talk about relationships. And even in this school, they do this amazing activity of doing an audit, like a very comprehensive audit of relationships once a year to check, does every student in the school have at least one positive adult relationship? And nearly every time they're going to find, no, there's actually a few students that are falling through the gaps, and therefore they're able to take measures about it. So yeah, that's just a simple illustration of like what a school looks like when it's taking this stuff seriously. So we've created a framework called Edumoción, and a platform, and it's also the name of our EdTech platform, in which we engage teachers and school leaders to go through kind of 4 processes and whatever type of learning experience they're doing with us, where they feel, think, act, and reflect. So whatever's going on, whatever learning journey they're in, if it's a 1-hour workshop, a 3-month training course, a 1-month training course in a cohort, they'll always be kind of activating these 4 moments: feeling, connecting with their emotions; thinking, reflecting deeply, critical thinking; acting, taking action plans, actually making things change happen; and then reflecting. And the journey to kind of reach Edumoción over the last few years has been, we initially started working with youth and with young people, doing lots of in-person programs, mainly in Bogota and kind of in the surrounding area for the first few years. Lots of learning, rolling up our sleeves, getting into communities, testing programs, testing approaches. And then we've moved on a little bit to working more and more with teachers in kind of Coschool 2.0. And that enabled us to start then spreading kind of across the country and doing nationwide teacher training programs. And now, thanks really to the use of technology and thanks to the creation of a platform, we're now working with teachers, starting to work with parents, and starting to really scale up. We're now in 10 countries across the region, and kind of that's Coschool 3.0, and the reason why we've raised investment, and we continue to grow kind of using technology. I already mentioned this, EdTech. So yeah, getting towards the end now, I just thought I could tell you a little bit about Edumoción, about this platform that we're building. So yeah, we're building Edumoción, a teacher training platform and an SEL, social and emotional learning platform for schools, with content, resources that teachers can use for themselves, for their students, for their own well-being. And on the platform, you'll find courses that are very, very short, 1-hour courses where teachers can learn a whole new concept in 1 hour around mental health, around dealing with trauma in the classroom, about building relationships. And the content is deliberately fun, engaging, but also pedagogically sound and based on research. We also have a mixture of approaches. We have learning pathways for cohort-based courses. That's probably the most popular offering at the moment, most popular product, where we take groups of teachers from different schools. They all learn together for a month in a synchronous process with a few kind of asynchronous touch points where they do online courses kind of in their own time. We also have used a facial recognition software powered by AI to do recognition of people's faces when they're watching our content. So we can actually see when people are emotionally engaged, happy, enjoying the content. It's with an Indian company called Lightbulb. So we like to think that Edumoción is an emotionally intelligent platform. And yeah, we also have pretty good measurement tools along the way, so people can be measuring and reflecting on how they're doing and how their levels of confidence are with dealing with these different issues. So far, in a year, we've got about 14,000 educators signed up. We have live events, support circles, coaching, and kind of driven by this role of our team called Edumotivadores, people that are there on hand, coaching, supporting, guiding teachers as they go through the process, and supporting schools as they get their teachers onboarded. And I thought we could finish before we move into questions with a question for you all. So obviously these social and emotional skills and competencies, there are lots of them. You will hear people talk about empathy and resilience and self-awareness and many others. And I have a question for you. According to research, what is the skill or the competency that is best for your health, has the best impact on your health? I would love people to write in the chat. Maybe someone knows this, maybe you just want to have a guess. Of all of these things, which is the thing that really actually has a positive impact on your physical health and your mental health? Proved by researchers. There is a kind of a podium, and there is one skill in particular that researchers have said, like this one, if you can be doing this like every day, like you're going to be healthier. You're going to live longer, basically. So please write in the chat, which one is the best? Is it empathy, creativity, self-awareness, something else? Curiosity, mindfulness. Mindfulness has got great research behind it. Ability, social connections is super important, and this is a little bit connected to that. Charisma, listening is super important. Happiness. Awesome. Okay. Oh, Ben, I think we've got a winner. Ben put gratitude. Okay, so gratitude. Gratitude, according to researchers, and there's researchers, I think there's a team of researchers in Berkeley and various other places that have really dug into this, have discovered that gratitude really has benefits on your health. Like, and here's just a few, like lowers your blood pressure, deeper sleep, improves your eating habits, reduce stress. Like, they've done this with control groups of people that do gratitude activities for as little time as a month. Like, I'm going to do a gratitude journal once a day, every day for a month, versus people that don't do it. And at the end, they find impacts, like really significant impacts in the lives of these people. So I thought what we could do is I could just leave you with a very simple kind of, we started with an activity of doing the emotional check-in. We could finish with a very simple kind of gratitude activity. You could do it right now by picking up your phone and sending a message to someone, or writing an email to someone, a quick note to someone. Find someone and say thanks. Like, say thanks to someone that maybe that you've been thinking of a lot recently, that's been there for you. Someone that you maybe it's a teacher. Maybe today, after hearing about the stories of the teachers, you've been like, God, I really want to thank Miss Jones. Like, I'm going to write her a message. I'm going to track her down on Facebook and just say thanks. Say thanks and tell them why. So often, the way we express gratitude is very fast. It's kind of fast food. It's like, oh yeah, thanks. Okay, yeah, cheers. See you later. Bye. Instead of saying that, take a moment, take a pause, take a breath. Like, hey, I want to thank you, and I want to thank you because you did this and you did that, and tell people why. And when you do that, notice how it feels in your body. Notice like what the feeling in like your chest and your face is like. It really, like, it feels like, oof, like it feels interesting. It feels cool. It feels exciting. Feels connected. And also notice what happens in the other person, the smile, the hug, the tears, like gratitude is a very powerful habit. You could also do a gratitude journal, wake up every day, 5 minutes. I'm grateful for these 2 things, these 3 things. Gratitude reflections at the end of the day, something I do with my wife sometimes when we're lying in bed. We would do a little activity where we say one thing that we're grateful for, one person that we're grateful for, and something that we wish for ourselves, and something that we wish for other people. Like, that's like a really nice kind of simple activity to do at the end of the day. It takes 5 minutes. You can do it lying in bed, and sends you to sleep, feeling grateful. So that's it. That's a little bit of my journey over the last 9 or 10 years, building Coschool, building Edumoción, the Huracan Foundation. If you want to follow us on Instagram, there's our Instagram page. I'll also put my LinkedIn in the chat. Thanks so much for listening, and be happy to have questions. I mean, if you maybe you've got a question, put it in the chat, or I don't know if Erila wants to suggest another dynamic, but thanks to you all, and I hope that all of you can join me on this mission to ensure that every child develops these social and emotional skills while they're in school. Thank you.
That is great. Thank you very much, Henry. I think it triggered lots of thoughts from all of us. Let's do this. For sure, we can use the chat, but I believe it's better to speak up and shoot your questions, and let this Henry what.
Well, I've got a couple of questions for Henry.
Yes.
Hi, Henry. That was a great presentation. Thank you very much for that. We did a study in our research team at Motorola, where we asked the participants of the group, who were they interacting with, who were they contributing to, who were they partnering with, and they did a mind map kind of thing where we had all the heads of people. We drew the lines, almost like the YouTube that you showed us. And we found something fascinating in here was when we asked people who they were connected with, they were very optimistic in terms of how much they were connected and how much they were contributing and interacting. But when we asked the other person if they were interacting with that individual, it was almost not. So we did 2 lines: what you thought you were connected and how much the other people actually perceived it. And suddenly we realized that some people thought they were really in the center of the world, but they were actually on the side and nobody was talking to them. And there were others who were doing this. And this self-awareness was one of the aha moments in what we came out of this. So I'm just curious, as you say, this relationships and connectivity, which is so important. Do you need an outsider to map it, or are we as human beings ever objective, able to understand what our contributions and what our relationships really are versus measuring it objectively through an external auditor?
Great point. And that's such an interesting study that you did at Motorola, where you found basically the gap between the perception of ourselves and others' perceptions of us. It's like there's this thing called the windows of Johari, which is we have blind spots, which sometimes things that we think we can see, but only others can see in us. Self-awareness, you mentioned it there, self-awareness is absolutely vital. And you can teach self-awareness. Self-awareness is a skill that you can get better at. And I would guess that in schools and in life in general, we're not often taught about self-awareness. How might you go about improving your self-awareness? If you ask a 15-year-old that, they're going to, I don't know, how would I do that? But there are ways you can do it. There are ways you can do it by engaging other people and having kind of a 360 approach and asking people for feedback and having continuous conversations about you with other people. But that doesn't happen. We avoid difficult conversations. We don't learn about giving feedback. We don't learn about having those kind of about developing our self-awareness. So I think that, yeah, the idea that self-awareness is a absolutely vital skill and is a big gap, I think is totally true. And often self-awareness, in my experience, happens for people post age 25, 26, normally when they have the fortune to do some coaching or have a kind of an exciting experience in their life, which makes them go, whoa, wow, now I can kind of perceive myself as something. I'm capable of doing a metacognitive process about myself. Until those moments, often people are just people are totally unaware of really who they are and what their role is in systems. So yeah, I mean, self-awareness is vital, and I think self-awareness can be taught and it can be improved on, and I think it can be taught, from a relatively young age. Difficult to do in kids that are young, under the age of 6 or 7 due to their brain development. But after that, you can start to do the exercises where let's reflect, let's stop, let's think about what Henry did this week. Let's ask for others for feedback on what Henry did this week and start to build up this kind of understanding of me as an entity that can improve.
And as a follow-up question to that, I mean, as we become adults, because we are not as self-aware, we are taught to get feedback. And so we say, ask other people for feedback, and they give you an awareness that you might be missing because you don't have that outside eye or outside look of what the interactions are. But there's also, at the same time, when you ask too much feedback, you might also be seen as needy and even sometimes a little weak sometimes. And so are there tools that you're teaching kids to ask for feedback and you're not to be seen as insecure?
It's a great question. To not be seen as insecure. I think that as a general rule, I think that probably we're not training ourselves, we're not training our students and our kids to be comfortable with having difficult conversations. So people are what's happening in schools is people are reverting to overpraising and the prize for effort, or the prize for coming 17th in the spelling test, or everything is getting rewarded with some kind of extrinsic prize. And that's not positive for someone's development either. We need to be told honestly and clearly, hey, you can get better at something, and this is how you can get better. And we need to learn about asking for feedback of how to get better. Today in companies, I'm sure we can all relate to this. Like it can be very uncomfortable, even for a 40-year-old executive, to ask people for feedback about, hey, how can I actually get better? So I think that there are, the two types of feedback kind of in the big buckets is kind of like positive feedback, less positive feedback. We tend to probably, and the types of schools that we have is it's all positive feedback. Everything's great. You're doing great. Okay. And so we're never going to talk about the difficult thing. We're not going to have the difficult conversation. I'm not going to have a difficult conversation about myself. I'm not going to ask people for feedback about the tough things. So I think that's how you develop security. That's how you move away from insecurity. It's about training people to have and to search for feedback which is going to allow them to get better. It's not just the all roses and everything smiles and everything's great. It's like, let's talk about the difficult stuff and let's spend time with that and let's like be with it instead of just kind of ignoring it or just wanting to hear the good stuff and get praise. And I think that the school system has a lot to answer for with that. Like we are creating school systems which are training people to become accustomed to systems of praise and a little bit of punishment as well, and too focused on extrinsic motivation and not enough focused on intrinsic motivation. Like what's going on inside? Why should I be a good person? Why should I help someone else? Like too often we're doing those things because I get a prize, a cookie, a book, a certificate at the end of it, where I should learn about doing those things because of intrinsic motivators.
No, good points, Henry. On the intrinsic one, you got us intrigued also. What we find in innovation is when you form a team which is intrinsically motivated to execute an idea, you don't really need to tell them what to do at the end of the day, and you don't have to tell them to keep on working, or you don't have to tell them to wake up early to start working also, because they are excited. Intrinsic has got some sort of the best fuel. We call it the best fuel of innovation. There's nothing else more motivating than something that comes from the inside. And how are you building intrinsic excitement or desire to do things in students that we could do that in big companies? How do you get, because we need to make sure our adults, when they come up with their ideas, our problem in corporations is a manager will say, okay, that's a great idea, who's available? And we take 3-4 people and say, you 3-4 people take that idea and make it happen. They didn't generate the idea necessarily. Yeah. They didn't actually necessarily get excited about the idea, but they've been asked to execute the idea. And often what we'll tell people is keep the idea generator with the idea implementation together, because that's what that intrinsic passion is. But having said that, that's not how the world works. The manager says, who's available? And it's Peter and Jane. And Peter and Jane necessarily are available because they're not necessarily the best people on the project. So how do we get people who are not the generators to somehow get intrinsic excitement versus being motivated with rewards, trophies, or a salary or a bonus as a way to make them work? Just ideas on that.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is you've got to remove or deprioritize the extrinsic motivators to some extent. You know, like if you create a system which is all about rewards and carrots and sticks, you know, everyone becomes basically conditioned to, well, where's the carrot, you know, where's the reward, where's the bonus? So I think you have to create systems where those things are not prevalent absolutely everywhere. Of course, they're necessary. Certain extrinsic motivators are going to be important in some way. I think that it's about allowing people, you know, intrinsic motivation truly comes from people discovering within themselves and being able to connect with something in themselves that goes, wow, this matters to me. And sometimes that doesn't happen in a 1-hour kickoff meeting. It happens through a bit of a deeper process. So for example, allowing people to do activities like journaling or writing or drawing or like expressing kind of like what am I interested in, what do I love about my job, or what am I excited about this project, and allowing people to express that in their own way and then maybe share it with the team, and allowing people to discover, you know, yeah, this is something like I'm pumped about, I'm excited about, or maybe not, I think is a way to do that. And so to go back to schools, like in schools you don't really want posters up everywhere saying like, be nice, be kind, and like that being the reason that kids are being nice and being kind, or be curious or be innovative. you need kids that are like taking time to, it's like with themselves, it's a conversation with your heart to be like, do I care about this? Am I interested in it? Am I going to do things about it? And I think that comes from having time, having interesting, provocative questions, and creating spaces where people can express that in their own words. And that's why I think coaching is such a great process, and coaching is so useful in corporate contexts and in many other contexts, because it allows people to go, yeah, that's what matters to me. The other thing doesn't, but that matters to me, and therefore I'm gonna hold on to that piece of motivation.
That's a great answer. And I'm going to keep on connecting it to innovation and what we do. One of the characteristics of great innovation leaders is they actually reflect. And there's a period of reflection to saying, what can I do different? What can I do better? What can I do faster? What can I do cheaper? And this reflection processes are really important versus just running all the time. But what I was really intrigued about, and I just want to make sure we talk about this topic too. I teach in business school, and I've got students who come up to me and say, what should I do with my career? And the typical answer is, what are you passionate for? And you should go do that. And my answer has always been, just choose something and work on something difficult, and you will fall in love with it. If you master it, you will fall in love with it. And in this philosophy, it's those who do are the ones who get passion. And those who talk and read never get the passion at all. You have to do, you have to suffer, and you got to master. And my question is this part of also the education process that you observe, wherever there's experiential learning, which is hard and difficult, there's ambiguity and uncertainty, and they get lost for a while, and then they get through the process, are the ones who then begin to be the one who are the confidence one, the ones who are ready to do something and say, I know what I want to do. So just thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that lots of that's the hardest question to a 16-year-old is like, well, what do you want to do when you're older? They're all going to go, well, I don't know. Like, and the fact that we're making 16, 17-year-olds make decisions, about what they're going to study at university and kind of get on the ladder towards a career path, it can be very stressful for them. And in fact, what the stories that come from experiential learning or volunteering or just getting stuck into something which, like you say, is a bit of a challenge. It's different, it's difficult, it's outside their comfort zone. That can often lead then to unexpected discoveries, because during that process, and a lot of the programs we did with youth originally were social entrepreneurship programs. So we get young people together, throw them a few challenges and say, look, there's contamination in your city, there's traffic in your town, what are you going to do about it? Those are not issues that young people are necessarily like totally excited about. They're more excited about listening to music and playing football. But if you put them in that situation, the role of an educator is to support, to guide, to nudge them along, to tell them to keep going, to provide them with some tools. Then, you start to see these breakthrough moments, after a few months, like kids are going, wait, but we could also do this. And, oh, we spoke to this person. Oh, and we connected it to this project. And now we're doing it in this school. Like, and that comes from them being put in a situation where a challenge is going to necessarily develop skills like creativity, self-awareness, resilience, communication. All those skills will be developed, like in our case, through doing social entrepreneurship projects. And then once they've got those skills, then doors start to open up for them, because then they're able to communicate with someone different. Then they're able to realize something about themselves they didn't know before. So yeah, challenging and tough projects are great ways for young people to learn. And you see that in the corporate context as well. And often high-performing kids in high-performing schools do not come from the challenges they're facing are not super challenging. They're academic challenges. They're the same. They're getting really good at getting grades. They're like racehorses that can run in a straight line very, very fast, but they're not good. When you put an obstacle in the way of the race course, like of the racehorse, it's going to fall over. So we need to put more obstacles in the way of young people, and then support them constructively, encouraging them, helping them to figure it out, because they will develop skills when tackling those obstacles that will then lead to new possibilities for them.
Henry, great responses. We've got to stop this thing very soon if we're running out of time. I want to give you one last question, which I think is important. In the corporate world, we believe teams are the ones which win, individuals can't. The story of the pack survives and the lone wolf doesn't. Winter is coming, right? So the expression is teams work. What are you doing in schools that creates teamwork with the students? On one side, they're supposed to excel as individuals, but the real world says it's how you should work in teams. And teams is how we get the best outcomes, where we complement each other and we run really fast. Any coaching guides on that?
Yeah, I can think of two things. Number one, the modeling of the adults in the community must model the expectation for students. So you can't have a school where you say, well, we want all our kids to just work in teams together and say, kids, like teamwork, like get into teams. The kids need to see the adults working in teams. The kids need to see the leaders working in teams. And they need to see what collaboration looks like. Many times we go into a school and we will find there is a dissonance between what the adults say they want the kids to be doing and what the adults are actually doing. So modeling, and I think in companies, it's very similar. Like if you want your junior team members and your managers to be collaborating, you've got to model that. They need to see what it looks like. Like they can't see the leadership team bitching about each other and not collaborating and being lone wolves. They need to see collaboration kind of going on in the organization. So that's one thing. And then second thing I think is to do with empowerment and ensuring that the most vulnerable voices, the least heard voices within school communities are heard. So the dinner ladies, the monitors on the school bus, the younger students, students that may be part of different groups, like making sure that those students have a platform and have a voice and participate actively in the governance of the school, in decision making, is super important, because otherwise you end up, with kind of this pyramid of like a few people making the decisions. So the schools that are kind of inverting the pyramid and saying, no, like everyone here has a voice, everyone is able to participate, everyone is empowered to speak up, I think is something that companies can also learn from about ensuring kind of diversity in who's making decisions and whose voices are heard.
That's great. Henry, first, thank you very much. I think this topic reminds me of a book written about 30-40 years ago called Everything I Learned in Kindergarten. And it's a fantastic book and still relevant, saying thank you, please, collaborate, and all that good stuff. And we forget that, and we should apply them more as adults. And so we need to go back to the great schools and see what is the cutting edge thinking. I think, to Henry, you guys are working on something very important, very relevant. Everything you talked about resonated with me, and I believe it resonated with our audience for sure. I'd like to give you the last minute and the last word, and then we'll wrap this meeting up. Thank you very much, Henry, for a great session.
Oh, thanks very much. They're great questions. I appreciate it, and thanks everyone to the comments in the chat, which I haven't been able to respond to. I'll finish by saying that this responsibility kind of depends on all of us, and I think one of the important things that I've learned in building Coschool and building this organization is that this has to be a systems approach. It has to come from the private sector, has to come from universities, has to come from the Ministry of Education, from private schools. Everyone seems to be in agreement about the importance of the development of these skills in schools, but it really does take teamwork and collaboration and cross-sector collaboration for that to happen. And it takes, at a systemic level, lots of organizations to be collaborating. But the great thing about it is it can also happen through individual actions every day. It happens through the way that we treat our partners, our work colleagues, our friends, our children, by setting an example, and going back to the Gandhi quote, like, by being the change we want to see in the world, we can make a difference. And so if today you can say thanks in a meaningful way to 2 or 3 people, if today you can demonstrate some self-awareness in a couple of moments, if today you can regulate your emotions when you're feeling stressed and you might lash out at someone and you don't, like, we do change the world through our actions. So yeah, I'll leave you with that the change has to happen at a systems level, but it also happens from an individual level.
Henry, thank you very much for a great session. We're going to bring this session to an end. So for everybody listening in, please feel free to drop off now. But this is part of the GIMI think tank, speakers who give us ideas that change the world. Henry May is doing this at the education level, and the ideas that he was talking about are truly scalable across corporations, universities, governments, and across the world. There is no boundaries on this thing. So well, what a great presentation. Thank you, Henry. And we look forward to having you back again sometime soon.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.